early impressions of Sonny Styles now that he's taken his first real NFL steps from me and some of his teammates.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I'm your host, your guy on the ground, David Harrison. And on today's episode, the latest on Brandon Aiyuk, and we're going to talk about culture, team fit, how the outside sees it versus what the inside is saying. But we're all going to start it off here on today's episode with Sonny Styles, All Access Everyday Club member Joy came through, said, do you think Sonny is going to wear the green dot? Meaning that Sonny Styles would have the communicator set in his helmet, receive the play call from defensive coordinator Daronte Jones, communicate that play call to the rest of the defense in the huddle. And if so, when does that start? And I'll just right off the bat, I think it's certainly possible that Sonny Styles is going to end up wearing the green dot, even call it likely if you want to. I think from what we've seen just in the first OTA practices, the first two OTA practices, and understand that we have seen two OTA practices, but they've had more than two OTA practices. We'll see our third coming up next week as well, coming right into the mandatory minicamp the following week. But just from what we've seen already, I think it's certainly possible, even likely, that Sonny Styles will indeed be wearing that green dot. I think most defensive coordinators, most coaches would prefer that their green dot wearer be in the middle of the formation. Not that it's necessarily required. A safety could certainly do that. Dan Quinn talked to us about that in Phoenix during the NFL's annual league meetings. But I think if you have the preference, if you have the most optimized option, a guy right there in the center of your defense certainly makes a lot of sense for that job. But the real part of that equation, like Dan Quinn told us in Arizona, again, is really just making sure that it's someone who's going to be on the field a large amount of the time, if not the entire time. You want a guy who's going to play at least 90% of the snap share on that defensive side of the ball. And as of right now, and again, still very early, but just from the development we've seen, just from the fit, just from the fact that he looks like he's an NFL linebacker, doesn't look like a guy who's making the leap to the NFL. He looks like a bona fide NFL linebacker. I think there is certainly a chance for 90% snap share or more. Where it starts to become a tricky subject and tricky answer is because he's already wearing it. He's already calling plays in the huddle when he's on the field in that position, those types of things. So really it's already started. But if you're asking when will it be solidified, that's just going to kind of base off of the official depth chart. I mean, technically it would be solidified at the end of August when they make the roster cuts, establish their initial 53, and then ahead of week one when they release their first unofficial depth chart, because the depth chart that you see on the websites and all that kind of stuff is always considered an unofficial depth chart. So technically that would be when it, I guess, starts officially, but throughout training camp, throughout the OTAs, throughout mandatory minicamp, like several of these guys are going to have communicator headsets because they're going to practice with one of those guys on the field at all times. And they could even have, they could have Sonny Styles on the field with a green dot on his helmet, and they could have Nick Cross on the field, the communicator set. It doesn't really change anything. Like the rule for the game is you can only have one, right? But if Sonny's got a communicator headset in his helmet, but Nick Cross is going to be the one to call the play. Like Daronte Jones will still call the play into the headset, the communicator sets. It's okay that Sonny hears it, pick up from the veteran Nick Cross on how he calls it, how he sets it. Like there's nothing wrong with that, right? So in some ways, a lot of ways, it's already started, that process of Sonny Styles wearing the green dot, wearing the communicator set, getting used to that communication, things like that. But really, it's the post play, it's the pre-snap communication after the play is called in the huddle, the adjustments you make, the checks, the reads, all those things. I can tell you whether it's Sonny, whether it's Will Harris, Frankie Lou, like across the board, Jordan McGee, like these dudes are talking out there. They are communicating at an all new level. I think it's really been great to see, really been fun to hear as well. A lot of effective communication coming from the offensive side and the defensive side of things. And those have been my observations, my impressions. But when we talk to some of his new teammates as well here in the NFL, you hear a lot about it as well. Odafe Oweh in his interview said that Sonny Styles looks a lot like a quote unquote baby Bobby Wagner, which I thought was a great line, a great description. Really talked about his stature, his communication, his command of the huddle, already calling plays, right? So kind of talking about that. He's already doing some of those things. And then safety Jeremy Reeves, who obviously has been around this organization for a long time through a lot of different players, a lot of rookies, a lot of new faces, says that Sonny is a guy that quote unquote has it, right? Talks at a high level about the game, comes from Ohio State, so he's got a good jump on NFL systems, but also has composure and the intensity, according to Revo, to show his understanding of the concept. So it's not just that he knows it, He knows how to communicate. He knows how to talk it. He knows how to kind of be about it. Doesn't see a lot of that out of rookies. Says that Sonny Styles really has all the tools to be very successful. Now, Joy also had another part of her question here asking about FanDuel and the team's projecting win totals. Is that based on last year's record, the upcoming schedule, the coaching? She says that, doesn't really see the team doing that well this season, unfortunately, which I think right now, good or bad, it's a little bit too early to get too solidified in an opinion. So I would I would encourage, I should say, everybody to kind of take it as it comes and kind of wait and see, and you'll get a good glimpse of that, enough in the preseason training camp, all those things. But I can't tell you exactly how the books, set their odds and all that kind of stuff because I'm not really inside that process. But I can tell you new additions, departures to the roster, coaching changes, schedules, all of it. They try to use everything they can in their disposal to figure out those win-loss projections. But FanDuel doesn't have just one win-loss projection, right? The highest is 7.5 wins, which is why we kind of talk about 7.5 being that line. But FanDuel also has lines for 5.5 wins, 6.5 wins, where you can take the over or the under on either of those lines. So if you don't think they're going to do as well as 7.5 wins or 7 wins, you could take the over on 5. If 5.5, if you think they're going to have 6 wins, take the over on the 5.5 if you want to be positive. But if you just simply don't think they're going to hit the 7.5, certainly take the under on the 7.5 if that's where you stand. Timothy came through with another Sonny Styles question asking if Sonny Styles will be used occasionally as a hybrid player, being a box safety. And yeah, I think absolutely that's one of the reasons he was viewed as high as he was in the NFL draft, was his ability to do multiple things. Daronte Jones has made no secret of really coveting guys that can do multiple things like cover and blitz and tackle and do those types of things. And Sonny Styles absolutely fits that measure. We also heard Mikey Sainristil earlier in this OTA period talk about versatility, not just being a buzzword, right? And I mentioned it here on Locked On Commanders Every Dayers. You might remember that conversation where versatility is a word we use a lot during the pre-draft process and even in the NFL draft weekend, immediately post-draft, kind of a buzzword. But in this defense, this Daronte Jones defense is not just a buzzword. It's not just something they say. It is absolutely a way of life. It is a requirement. Mikey Sainristil, again, talking about that. Plus the addition of how much you get to learn or how much you are required to learn, even the other positions on the field and how it helps you. So for Sonny Styles, he's certainly going to be a part of that. So you're going to see him right there in the middle of the formation quite a bit, I think, but you're going to see him on the outside. You might see him in that safety role. You might see him covering somebody from time to time. I think the thing about Sonny Styles is going to be quarterbacks are going to need to understand where he is on a down-to-down basis. And the hope and the plan is that the quarterback is going to need to know where everybody is from a down-to-down basis, that there's not going to be a situation where a quarterback can just drop back, read one dude and say, okay, this is cover 3. I know exactly where that guy's going to be, exactly where that guy's going to be. I don't even need to look at him, which is what was happening last year, unfortunately. And you actually have to read the defenses. You can't just simply look at, you want to cloud the image as much as you can. If you're Daronte Jones and Sonny Styles, absolutely capable of helping him do that. Now, how much of the outside impression from Washington Commanders OTAs early phase 3 processes is real on the inside of the organization? We tackle that question coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Summer is supposed to be the season everyone looks forward to. Vacations, longer days, more time outside, more plans with family and friends. But for a lot of people, summer can simply feel overwhelming. Schedules get packed, routines change, and sometimes it feels like you're trying to do everything at once instead of enjoying the season, the good weather, the time off if you have it. That's why it's important to also make time for yourself too. Even if it's not just yourself, your priorities and therapy can help you create a version of summer that feels manageable and enjoyable. You learn tools for balancing your summer schedule so you don't lose control of it and lose the opportunity to rest, reset, truly experience the season to come. With over 30,000 therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched with a licensed therapist based on your needs and your preferences. And if the match doesn't feel right, you can switch anytime, no questions asked. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Outside impressions of what's going on inside the organization can be tricky, but in this case, they're actually spot on. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today and every day, and to the Everydayers come through for every episode. I greatly appreciate you coming back through for another one today. If you haven't already checked out the Everydayer Club, please head over to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com. Check out the offers for ad-free episodes, newsletters, text message access, all kinds of fun stuff, discounts to the merch store, all kinds of stuff going on. Again, lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to check out the Everydayer Club today. Moving now on to our next question from Jonathan, who came through, said, from the outside looking at it, appears to be a completely different team this year. That is reflecting the vision Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have talked about since day one. From what you've seen firsthand, asking what I've seen firsthand, is this culture shift under Adam Peters and Dan Quinn actually as real as it looks? And if so, what's driving the faster practices, better playing conditions, and tighter accountability? I'll say this, the culture has been felt and the culture change and shift has been real since day one. Now, obviously, you have some old habits. You've got some players that maybe come from different ways of doing things, and they try to embrace it. Maybe they're just not kind of really about it or what have you, and things like that. Ultimately, I think pretty much every player that I've interacted with under this new culture of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn has embraced it, appreciated it, even if they didn't get to last in it for very long. Some of them more than others, certainly, those types of things. But I think the culture shift has been real from day one. Does it take time to change all that stuff? Of course it does. You got over 100 people, really, when you talk about all of the nuts and bolts that go into operating an NFL franchise, well over 100 people just on the football side of things. And so it's going to take some time, right? But the culture is absolutely real, and the culture is absolutely felt. So I know it's used a lot in that conversation. That word is brought up a lot, but it's legit, right? Odafe Oweh, new to the organization, talked about how the organization doesn't just want to win games. They want to communicate. They want to be a team, and they don't want to just get caught up in the business side of things. I know we saw a little bit of getting hung up on the business side of things last offseason with Terry McLaurin and his whole situation. Terry spoke to us and said that it was really good for himself to be out of that and be back at OTAs, be back with his teammates for this year like he had been in previous years other than 2025. I wrote more about that for WUSA9.com if you want to read more about that. But Odafe, going back to him, says he can tell everyone is genuinely trying to get to know everybody on a real level as people, not just as teammates, which is important because he also kind of mentioned going to war with brothers. It means you want to do things for that person to your left and your right and all that kind of stuff. And it's true, right? If you go to battle with just dudes, I mean, you're going to try, you're going to give it, good energy and all that kind of stuff. But when it's somebody that you consider a brother, trust me, it matters. You know what I mean? It's not that you don't go out there and put in good effort for the other people, but there's just a little bit of an extra gear that you just can't find unless you have that personal connection. Terry McLaurin also talked about camaraderie being really big this time of year, which is something that DQ and AP, he says, have really emphasized, and that everyone, new guys, returning guys, rookies, everyone has really done a great job of buying into it this season, as well as in previous seasons. Practice energy is up, like you noted, like the outside, opinion is kind of stating, and yeah, you can feel that energy climbing when you're out there on the field as well, or even in the bubble, like we were for the first OTA practice. Dan Quinn said he wants speed to be the first thing that jumps out, and it has. I talked to more than a couple players, a couple of them off the record, just kind of side conversations, nothing salacious, but talking about the speed and just, man, like it's kind of hard to track everybody sometimes, kind of hard to say, like, okay, I want to watch 4 on this rep, and by the time the ball is snapped and by the time everything is happening, you're just like, where did he go? Which stunt did he make, or which twist did he make, or where did he fall into the coverage? It's kind of hard sometimes to really keep an eye on every single thing going on out there. Marcus Mariota said that there is a sense of urgency. Now, some of that is due to, at least in part, learning the new playbook and doing the install process and all that stuff. But the sense of urgency is certainly being felt by the players. I think we can see that sense of urgency out there on the field as we observe these practices. Sam Cosme, who's been here again through some down times and some better times, right, says he can feel that there is, quote unquote, more fire under our, he said a different word, I'm going to say rear end, right? So a little bit more fire under them. Talking about conditioning, talking about the health of the players. Jaden Daniels and Josh Connerly were isolated by Jonathan specifically for their conditioning. Jaden talked about building himself from the ground up this offseason, not just physically, but also mentally, and how he relates to everyone on a human level as a leader of this team. So I'm sure that's being appreciated by his teammates. Josh Connerly Jr., who we've all noticed came into this offseason with a little bit of a body transformation, told us that he cut down a lot during the offseason because he felt, quote unquote, pretty fat. Those are his words, not my words. He says he's been eating cleaner. He's been eating a little bit less, and says he can feel it. He can feel the benefits of it and feel the agility coming back a little bit more than it was before now that he's back on the field, which, of course, comes to accountability. You love seeing that second-year offensive lineman have that level of self-accountability to where he can identify, want to fix that, take the steps necessary in the offseason to fix that. But accountability also comes from inside the organization as well. David Blau wants ownership across the board on the offense. Also wrote about that for WUSA9.com if you want to check out those comments. Mikey Saintersill going back to his comments last week, emphasizing and the focus and knowing every position on the defense so that he can specifically himself can help bait quarterbacks into actions that they wouldn't otherwise take. But you translate that and you transfer that to the rest of his teammates as well. Everybody really embracing this idea of knowing every position and understanding how everything kind of works within itself. Charles Omenihu, another free agent, commented on how deep the front is and how it leaves no room for anyone to drag. And one of the things that really stood out to me, again, going through this OTA process, is the understanding that the why matters. You know what I mean? And we've heard Dan Quinn and some of the other coaches talk about like getting down to the why for each player. Why does Jaden Daniels play football? Why does Terry McLaurin want to be an NFL receiver or continue to be an NFL receiver? But it goes both ways, right? The players also like to know why we run this player, why we're going to install this concept, or why we think this is going to work. And when the players have that information, they have the opportunity to get that information, it really creates a better sense of ownership for the operation that's going on out there. And that leads us into Timothy, who asked, how much better can the defensive line be with the addition of Eric Henderson, who is former Los Angeles Rams defensive line coach, former USC Trojans defensive line coach, who may be one of the best out there. And I'll tell you, Eric Henderson coached Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald gave him a lot of credit for his development and all those things. Seeing Myles Garrett get traded to the Los Angeles Rams, Eric Henderson seeing Aaron Donald, make a little bit of illusion. I don't know how real it is, but a little bit of alluding to maybe coming out of retirement, this year. I'm certain, he's kind of like watching that, because not only does he know, at least Aaron Donald really well, he knows what that D-line is capable of, but the Rams are on the Commanders' schedule. So, that's going to be impactful as well. But I think the defensive line could be greatly impacted. I think it'd be greatly improved. I think it's going to be a little bit hard, truthfully, not that we're not going to do it. We're going to attribute the benefit or the growth, one way or the other, to the coaching staff and all that kind of stuff, as they deserve it. But also, you have a lot of new additions to this defensive line that could help it get better from 2025, just in general. Odafe Oweh, obviously, is coming over. Charles Omenihu, Caleb Chason, Tim Settle coming back to Washington, but he's been gone long enough. The system is new enough that he is a new addition, right, to this version of the Washington Commanders. Wasn't even the Commanders when he last played for Washington. New roles for guys that are coming back. Javon Kinlaw, seeing him do some things that are a little bit different than what we saw him do last year. Could be Daron Payne and Johnny Newton also having new roles within this new defense. We'll just have to kind of see that. Depth players, Joshua Josephs, draft pick this year out of Tennessee. Dietrich Wise Jr., nice edge setting guy, rotational piece for this defensive line once he's healthy. DJ Davidson, you talked about Dorrance Armstrong, but obviously a returning guy who's going to have could have a lot of success depending on how the injury recovery goes. But you also have some young potential: Drake Jackson, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Ricky Barber. I really like how this defensive line is stacked. I really like what we've seen so far from the early showings of Daronte Jones' scheme and style. I like what Eric Henderson has done as well in some of the drills I've been able to watch him execute. I love the energy that assistant defensive line coach Darryl Tapp brings to practice every day. I've gotten to catch up with him twice now here in the offseason. We'll get an interview with him coming up next week. So, those types of things, man, just absolutely love seeing those. And absolutely, you can see a lot of improvement from the defensive front in general this season. Again, it's going to be hard to quantify how much is Eric Henderson, how much is Daronte Jones, how much is the new guys, how much is the old guys being used in new ways. But really, we can dissect it, we can slice it up. I think really, hopefully, we just get to enjoy watching it happen. What we would all enjoy watching happen is the end of the Brandon Aiyuk saga. One way or the other, get to a resolution. That story took yet another turn, pun intended-ish, coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Support for today's episode comes from Square, the business platform that helps sellers become neighborhood favorites. Square keeps your business running smoothly by helping you simplify your day-to-day while giving you room to grow still. There's an old town part of the city that I live in, right? You got the entire city, but then you have kind of old town of this city. And I always notice how efficient the businesses there are. There's a great feel to it. There's a great pace to it. More times than not, they're using Square. And whether it's a digital receipt, loyalty club management, or just ordering at a window and being able to walk away with your food really efficiently, it's always been a smooth operation every time my family and I head down there. Square helps you run your businesses more smoothly, bringing payments, operations, and insights together all in one place, so you're ready for whatever is next. And right now, new listeners can get up to $200 off Square hardware when you sign up at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's SQUARE.com/go/LockedOnNFL. Get started with Square and build a setup that works the way you do. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today and every day. And thank you for heading over to WUSA9.com, where you can find my written work covering your Washington Commanders. Last question here on this episode. Jonathan came through. There has been speculation surrounding Brandon Aiyuk after reports of a civil warrant being issued. In your experience, is that the type of situation that can impact a player's standing with the team, or is it being overanalyzed by fans looking for signs that the 49ers may move on from him? Yeah, overanalyzed by fans and media alike. Listen, Brandon Aiyuk, if you're not aware, shot a video of himself driving past Levi Stadium in December of 2025 in the midst of this whole, all this drama and the cancel guarantees and all that stuff. And for one, driving while you're recording, not a great look. Two, in the video, you can see his speedometer. And like me, Brandon Aiyuk keeps his speedometer digital screen on the digital miles per hour, hits over 100 miles per hour. Apparently that zone that he was driving through was a 40-mile-an-hour zone, so doing more than twice the speed limit, doing 60 miles over the speed limit, plus 60 miles plus actually over the speed limit, in fact. So, yeah, definitely not the way you want to be driving. And look, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I'm some kind of saint and I always do the speed limit and never go above the speed limit, but twice the speed limit is a little bit different. 60-plus miles over the speed limit is a little bit different. That's something that I can tell you I've never done. Now, that happened in December. So what this new development is that I think it's in Santa Clara, California. Don't quote me on that part, but the law enforcement agency that would police that area of Northern California, basically with, conjunction with the DA's office there, and they filed misdemeanor charges for Brandon Aiyuk. I'm familiar of it as reckless driving in my law enforcement days. I don't know what they call it there, but it's basically reckless driving. I think reckless driving is a term that everybody can kind of attribute. It's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. And, I don't know California state processes, right? So take all of this with kind of a loose grain of salt type of thing, right? But basically, Brandon's got to essentially turn himself in and be processed and booked and immediately released at the police department there. Or his attorneys could actually, and again, every place is different, so take it with a grain of salt, but just from past experiences, attorneys could actually negotiate for him to not go into the police station, turn himself in, do all those types of things, but actually come to an arraignment at a courthouse, in which case he would, everything would happen there. Most likely from there, that would be it. Like most likely Brandon Aiyuk's never even going to step into a courtroom again after that. And his lawyers are basically take care of everything from there. He'll pay a fine. He'll do those types of things. And again, that's kind of just your basic situation. I'm not claiming to know everything about the situation or, have information from inside the office. That's just a basic general overview of just law enforcement and judicial practices. Again, notwithstanding the jurisdiction, the state, because I've never lived in California, hope to never live in California. No offense to those of you who live in California. It's not my bag of tea or cup of tea, I should say. Is this something that's going to deter the Washington Commanders, basically? Like, that's the question, right? Is this going to deter the Washington Commanders from bringing him on? No, I don't. Like, again, this action already happened. This isn't news, right? Like, is it news that the warrant and all this stuff has been issued? Yes. And does the word warrants immediately draw feelings of certain emotions from people? Absolutely. Does the word arrest absolutely, elicit emotions? And look, maybe it's my background, but the word warrant and the word arrest doesn't really move the needle for me, right? So when this all came out, I'm like, okay, dope. Like, it's a misdemeanor. Like, it's not like the dude is on the run, after murdering somebody. Like, it's not that big of a deal, to be quite honest with you. Again, not justifying, not discarding, not agreeing with the actions, just saying from a general law enforcement standpoint, not really that big of a deal. From a team standpoint, again, this isn't news. If this were to change Adam Peters' stance on Brandon Aiyuk joining the team, which as of right now, we don't actually officially know. We all kind of think we know, but we don't officially know. If this were to change, that basically what it would signal is that Adam Peters is more scared of the PR potential than anything else. And I would be highly disappointed if that were the case, because I don't think Adam Peters is that way. So I would be disappointed if that was the case, because again, the actions already known. Like, this isn't a new behavior, right? Then Brandon Aiyuk, in classic trolling fashion, which is his right to do, posts a video of himself on Instagram driving very high rates of speed on a track, in a controlled environment where you're supposed to, like, if you want to drive fast, those are the areas you're supposed to go to drive fast, because they're controlled. If you wreck, like, you could get hurt, certainly, but you're safe from society and all those types of things. And some people apparently had a problem with him doing that. And listen, that's the world we live in today, man. If you're gonna be disrespectful to somebody, expect them to be disrespectful back. The timing of it is really weird. It doesn't take 6 months. So again, the video that posted of Brandon Aiyuk driving past Levi Stadium came out in December. It's June now, right? So roughly 6 months, like not exactly 6 months, but roughly 6 months. Doesn't take 6 months to make a decision to charge somebody with misdemeanor, reckless driving, or whatever the charge is in Northern California. I can tell you that. Like, that's a little bit ridiculous. So the timing of it all, just a little suspect, just to put it that way. And again, my life has taught me that coincidences are very rarely coincidence. So the fact that this is coming out at this time, to me, what this looks a lot like is Adam Peters, Kyle Shanahan, the San Francisco 49ers understanding, ain't nobody giving you nothing for Brandon Aiyuk. You're going to release him. They're going to sign him to a new contract. You're going to lick your wounds. Bygones are going to be bygones at some point in time. And you're just going to move on with your freaking life. The 49ers, for whatever reason, petty, bitter. Like at this point is bitter. Like it's not even petty anymore. Now you're just bitter. And truthfully, to me, and that's just my stance, it looks worse for the 49ers than it does for anybody else, because to me, it definitely looks like there's some sort of operation going on here. It's like we're basically trying to make Brandon look as bad as possible so that when we release him and he goes somewhere else and he balls out for them, that nobody blames us for releasing him anyway. Because again, like there's this conversation of like Brandon's just out of shape. Brandon doesn't want to play ball. Brandon's washed up. Brandon's never going to do anything again. And listen, Brandon never doing anything again, like the injury becoming a big problem, maybe becoming a repeating injury, knock on wood, it's not, those types of things, absolutely part of the equation. But the San Francisco 49ers believed that Brandon Aiyuk was done, that Brandon Aiyuk was never going to be a meaningful member of a football team ever again. I promise you, they would not be doing everything that they're doing. This is about them losing a player they know is capable of doing really great things on a football field before and potentially in the future. Like these guys are way too ego driven for that not to be the case. So again, to me, the 49ers have transferred from petty territory to bitter territory. Now you're just bitter, and honestly, it looks ugly, and Jesus don't like ugly. So that's just how I feel about it. Doesn't move the needle at all for Brandon Aiyuk coming to Washington as far as I'm concerned. I know some people disagree. That's fine. Ultimately, it's not my decision. It's not most of those people's decisions. It's Adam Peters' decision. And guess what? If Brandon Aiyuk comes to Washington and he does ball out the way the 49ers are terrified that he's going to, and he has, 6 catches, 85 yards, 2 tutties against San Francisco 49ers in week 6 and a win for the Washington Commanders, a lot of those people who are talking whatever they're talking are going to praise the crap out of Brandon Aiyuk at that time. And, it's up to you whether you remember that and you choose to remember that or not. But that is how I feel about the Brandon Aiyuk latest. Like you, I am very, very ready for this whole thing to be over because it's honestly just crossed over into stupid territory. Next time on Locked On Commanders, however, we will continue to talk about some things that are not stupid. And then we will talk about even more things moving into the future of this franchise that we all love talking about so much. I appreciate you coming back for those episodes, this episode and any other episodes. And in the future, in the meantime, if you're between episodes, you need to find me. You can do so on X at DHarrison82, on Instagram at DHarrison_82, or you can just text me by becoming a member of the Locked On Commanders All Access Everydayer Club, lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to do that today to the Everydayers, as I do every day. I appreciate you coming through for today's episode, and to everybody out there, thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and we will talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On podcast network, your team every day.